As the IFA pay controversy threatens to widen, Minister Simon Coveney says the association needs to be transparent about salary deals.
Farmers are furious with what's been unfolding over recent days, and I think there's a huge job to be done within the IFA now to rebuild trust.
Remembering the victims of the Paris attacks. President Hollande honours those who died and says France will be relentless in pursuit of their killers.
A narrow escape for two PSNI officers after a gun attack in West Belfast.
Were it not for the professionalism of my officers and the equipment and the tactics that we use, then we could have been looking at fatalities.
And countdown to the only show in town, the night when everyone's a child again.
I will be dancing for the opening of the Late Late Toy Show, and I'll be dancing for the finale.
Good evening and welcome to 6-1. The controversy over top pay in the Irish Farmers Association looks set to widen this evening, with a call for pay transparency at the former Irish Dairy Board, now known as Ornua. The president of the ICMSA, the country's second largest farm organisation, has said he's going to raise the pay issue at the next meeting of the company's board, of which he's a member. Ornua, one of the biggest food exporting companies in the country, owns the very successful Kerrygold brand. In the IFA controversy, the Minister for Agriculture has said the association has a huge job ahead to rebuild trust amongst farmers.
The scandal over top pay at the IFA cast quite a shadow over the AGM of the second main farmers' organisation, the ICMSA, in Limerick today. Many of the members here are also members of the IFA, and pay and transparency was high on their agenda.
Some of those people should be over in Monaco with the Prince, because that's basically where they think they are.
Too many excuses and lame excuses.
You're not convinced?
No.
What can you do?
That's fine.
What can you do? Can't do nothing about it. No. The doubt is in farmers' minds. What is going to be the future for their farmers if they're going to be involved in organisations that's not trustworthy?
The Minister for Agriculture said he was shocked to learn of the top pay levels at the IFA and described Pat Smith's salary as inappropriate.
Most importantly, I think there's a process of rebuilding of trust that's required, which is going to take some time, because I do think as an organisation, which is a grassroots organisation, in every community in the country, IFA membership is about local farmers, big and small, working together in the interests of farmers through their organisation.
The president of the ICMSA, John Comer, gave indicative details of his own remuneration, but said that he is prevented from indicating how much he is paid as a director of Ornua, which is the former Irish Dairy Board. He said that this has to change.
I will be advocating at the board of the next Ornua meeting that we should review this policy, examine the reasons why it hasn't happened in the past, and examine the potential consequence if it does happen in the future, and the knock-on effects, be they positive and negative, because there will be some negative effects with total transparency, because there's individuals involved.
EU Commissioner Phil Hogan was present, but he was determined not to get dragged into talking about the IFA debacle. He said it was not an issue for Europe, but was for the farmers themselves to sort out.
Well, George is standing by for us now. So the IFA row rolls on then, George, and potentially opens up on a number of new fronts.
I think that's true. There are an awful lot of the members here. This is the ICMSA, the dairy farmers. They're joint members of the IFA. And even for them, the whole issue of what has gone on over the past week at the IFA has been very big. So they were quizzed, and there was a big debate this morning about the whole issue of pay and transparency. And particularly for the president here of the ICMSA, John Comer, he was put under a lot of pressure in relation to that. And he came out with details in relation to what he was paid for directorships, but said that he was precluded because he's not allowed tell anybody how much he's getting for Ornua, which is the Irish Dairy Board. And that, I think, is like a red rag to a bull to some of the people who were present, because they feel that that is part of the issue. The farmers ultimately own the co-ops, who ultimately own Ornua. So the farmers feel that they should know, at least certainly some of them do feel that they should know. And it does also highlight a new, I suppose, ground where maybe there are areas in the country and organisations in the country where maybe some more transparency in relation to those issues is required. But overall, I think the mood here was still one whereby they're happy with their own organisation. There's no doubt about that. They're relatively well off as farmers compared to the average farmer. They've had a very difficult year this year here in terms of dairy prices, and they're worried about the volatility that they face. But the one thing, and all of those things, and they put them to the Minister and they put those issues to the European Commissioner. But behind it all is a little bit of fear about what we're into now in terms of that whole area of trust and the importance of holding their representative bodies together, because they value highly the job that these representative bodies do.
George Lee in Limerick, thank you.
A national memorial service has taken place in Paris to remember the 130 people killed in the terrorist attacks in the city 2 weeks ago. French President François Hollande said France would be relentless in its pursuit of Islamic State, which was behind the attacks.
François Hollande has spent the past 5 days lobbying world leaders to form a united coalition to counter the threat of Islamic State, the group that brought havoc and death to the streets of Paris this day 2 weeks ago. But for France and its president, today was about remembering and paying tribute to those who were so cruelly killed as they enjoyed an evening out in Paris. Gathered here were relatives and friends, survivors, members of the emergency services and those who had tended to the injured and dying. There was a minute's silence, and then the names of those who lost their lives were read out.
Yannick Mainviel, 39 ans.
Cécile Alexandra Miss, 32 ans.
130 in all, their average age 35, from 18 countries, from all walks of life.
Nick Alexander, 35 ans. Noémie Gonzalez, 23 ans.
Leaders from across the political divide stood shoulder to shoulder, united in the face of an attack which was carried out, in the words of President Hollande, by an army of fanatics with an insane cause who had betrayed their God.
Ce jour que nous n'oublierons jamais.
He said it was a day the nation would never forget and vowed to destroy those responsible. He also said the French people could play their part by returning to the bars and restaurants, to cultural and sporting events, by enjoying the simple pleasures which he said the militants hated. Michelle McCaughrean, RTE News.
Russia has announced it's suspending its visa-free arrangement with Turkey from the start of next year. The countries have been in a war of words since Turkey's Air Force shot down a Russian warplane.
Almost 200 Turks on the streets of Istanbul chanting anti-Russian and anti-Assad slogans, some with posters depicting Vladimir Putin as a vampire. They're protesting over Russian airstrikes in Latakia. As tensions escalate between Ankara and Moscow over the downing of a Russian jet on Tuesday, Turkey's president warned the Russian president not to play with fire. Tayyip Erdogan said Russia was doing just that by attacking the Syrian opposition, but he said he wanted to meet Mr. Putin face-to-face at climate talks in Paris to resolve the issue. Before that happens, Vladimir Putin wants an apology from Turkey. In Russia today, hundreds paid their respects to the Marine killed in the search and rescue operation for one of the pilots of the downed jet in Syria. The Russian foreign minister questioning whether Turkey has real intentions to fight terrorism. Sergei Lavrov announcing Russia will suspend its visa-free regime with Turkey from January 1st. The move could affect Turkey's tourism industry, its seaside resorts among the most popular holiday destinations for Russians. The war of words also seemingly continued online today, with the Russian embassy in the UK tweeting this image. Speaking about the issue today, the UN envoy to Syria said the shooting down of the jet had certainly not helped the peace process in the region. Helen Donoghue, RTE News.
Still to come on tonight, 6-1, a consultant radiologist tells a fitness to practice inquiry that he wasn't adequately trained on some of the equipment.
And coming up in sport, after their disappointment in Europe, Leinster and Ulster face off in a Pro 12 derby encounter at the RTS. What has become boring?
Police in Belfast are treating as attempted murder a gun attack on 2 PSNI officers last night. Northern Ireland's First Minister Peter Robinson and Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness have condemned the shooting.
Parked at Woodburn PSNI station in West Belfast, the vehicle that came under fire during last night's incident. It was hit several times, but for the bulletproof glass and reinforced panelling, the officers sitting inside would have been killed.
There's absolutely no question in my mind, were it not for their protective capacity in terms of the vehicle that the officers were in, we would have been looking at fatalities. An absolute tragedy. This would have been in the mouth of Christmas. Not something we want to see in Belfast City. We also have said many times we thought that was resigned to history. It's clearly not in the minds of a small minority, and we need to support the ongoing support of the community to try and bring these people to justice.
The police were parked in this estate doing follow-up investigations after a man was shot in the head and seriously injured here last week. The skid marks in the grass were probably caused by a vehicle used in the attack. That black 3 Series BMW was later found burnt out in a nearby estate. It had a Cork registration.
The registration of that vehicle was 05C for Charlie 24774. We believe those are false plates and the vehicle may have been stolen.
It's 3 years, November 2012, since dissidents murdered prison officer David Black. He was ambushed on the M1 motorway. Last night's attack was a reminder the threat from dissidents still exists.
Thank you very much, and time is up, and best wishes.
Earlier this week, after Peter Robinson fielded questions as First Minister in the Northern Ireland Assembly for the last time, his fellow DUP members stood to applaud him. Prompted by Martin McGuinness, Sinn Féin members on the left followed suit. It was another indication of Sinn Féin deepening its commitment to the structures of the Good Friday Agreement. Last night's incident was one more reminder that there are people north and south who oppose partition and who are prepared to kill to achieve their aims. By their standards, they'd regard last night as a failure. Tommy Gorman, RTE News, West Belfast.
Sexual offences are on the rise according to the latest crime figures. The latest CSO statistics show a rise in robbery, extortion and theft, but a drop in the number of killings. However, only half of all sexual offences and a fifth of all burglaries are solved.
Today's crime statistics date back between 2 and 7 years, but indicate crime trends over a 5-year period. 4 of the 16 serious crime categories increased, including robbery, extortion, theft and recorded sexual offences, which were up 27%. Homicides fell over the 5-year period, with 4 out of 5 detected. But of the 83 killings in 2013, proceedings were taken in 53 cases, with convictions in 23, just over a quarter. The largest decrease was in road traffic offences, down by almost half, with recorded drugs, guns, bomb and public order offences all down by an average of a third. The figures coincide with a reduction in gangland crime, as over the period, many of those involved were either shot dead or jailed following Garda investigations. What is perhaps most worrying about today's crime report is the fact that it calls into question the Garda's ability to solve crime. detection rates fell over the 5-year period in 7 serious crime categories, including robbery, theft, fraud and sexual offences. Only 1 in 5 burglaries were detected. And a CSO crime review also said that these relatively low detection rates could in fact be overstated by as much as 16%. Paul Reynolds, RTE News, Garda Headquarters, Dublin.
A recruitment campaign for An Garda Síochána is underway. The force is aiming to recruit 600 new members in 2016. Anyone interested in applying for the jobs can do so from today on the website publicjobs.ie. That's publicjobs.ie.
A consultant radiologist has told a medical council inquiry that he did his best at Bantry General Hospital but faced many problems there. Dr. Dawar Siddiqui was giving evidence on the 3rd day of his inquiry into allegations of serious errors in his reports on CT scans. Well, let's talk to our health correspondent, Fergal Barrs, who joins us now from the inquiry. Fergal, Dr. Siddiqui has given direct evidence on the allegations against him today. What did he have to say?
Yes, Dr. Siddiqui was the only consultant radiologist working at Bantry General from May 2013. And he said he had a lot of difficulties. One of them was he didn't get any training for the new voice recognition system, for the new digital recording system in terms of CT scans. And up to then, he had to do his work based on hard copies. He also said that a radiographer went on leave for 2 weeks. He worked well beyond his contractual hours, and he didn't agree with all of the findings of the expert witness we heard this week, who found serious failings in 13 out of 22 CT cases. And Dr. Siddiqui said there'd be no patient complaint before this inquiry.
Fergal, this inquiry is ongoing, but I think one of the allegations, is that right, has been withdrawn?
Yes, the inquiry has withdrawn the second allegation that his rate of error was unnecessarily high, and it's also withdrawn 2 of those 22 CT cases. But the first allegation that he made serious mistakes, serious errors, that remains. Dr. Siddiqui made an application to the inquiry today to have deferred for some time, but the Fitness to Practice Committee didn't agree to that. So it's going to resume next week, and it's due to conclude on Tuesday.
Very good. Fergal Barrs, thank you very much.
The Minister for Health, Leo Varadkar, has signed an escalation order to help deal with emergency department overcrowding. It means that a hospital must take certain measures if patients have been waiting over 9 hours on a trolley. These include carrying out extra ward rounds to facilitate discharges and/or open more beds on wards. Well, the Taoiseach has said there's no difficulty between himself and the Deputy Leader of Fine Gael, James Riley, despite reports that they had clashed over the issue of abortion. And Kenny reiterated if re-elected, he would establish a citizens' assembly or convention to debate the issue within 6 months. Mr Kenny was speaking in London at a meeting of the British-Irish Council.
There is no difficulty between myself and the Deputy Leader of the Fine Gael party. Dr. Riley is perfectly entitled to his personal views. My issue was that it would be impossible to have an early referendum on an issue that is as complex as this without people understanding fully what's involved in it.
Well, Martina Fitzgerald is standing by, so that's the plan, Martina, but the issue of repealing the 8th Amendment is proving to be as divisive as ever.
Yes, and James Riley gave an interview a week ago saying he was in favour of a referendum on repealing the 8th Amendment, and he also spoke at the Parliamentary Party meeting on Wednesday. Now, that was very interesting because there was no shortage, it has to be said, of Fine Gael members on Wednesday evening taking issue with him. Not necessarily on his stance on the issue, because some people are in favour of that, but also some people have opposing views, but on what is perceived to be a solo run on a very sensitive issue. And behind the scenes, some in Fine Gael are saying that they were at a very advanced stage in their policy for the general election on this, i.e. a forum. So there is a feeling at some levels that he has spoken out of term, but the Taoiseach saying he's no difficulty with him. The Taoiseach also basically today reiterating in public what he committed to in private at that Fine Gael parliamentary meeting, the Citizens Forum to deal with the issue, and whatever process is recommended, it could be a referendum, that he would consider a free vote within the Fine Gael parliamentary party. And he has travelled a very long way politically on this issue. When you go back to 2013, Fine Gael lost 5 TDs, 2 senators over the Protection of Life During Pregnancy bill, but of course one returned to the fold. But the Taoiseach also gave a timeline today, 6 months to set up this forum if re-elected, but that's a timeline for discussions, a timeline for action. What that action will be is another matter.
Martina Fitzgerald, thank you.
The cost of electricity and gas is due to fall for hundreds of thousands of customers in the new year. SSE Electricity said it will cut its household electricity prices by 2% from January. It'll reduce bills by €23 a year. There'll be similar savings for Electric Ireland gas customers after the company said it's reducing its prices by 2.5%. Now, there we take a break, but still to come as Paris prepares to host a major climate change conference next week. We'll be talking to former President Mary Robinson, the UN Special Envoy for Climate Change.
And sniffing out the counterfeiters, Revenue seizes a huge haul of fake perfumes destined for the Christmas market.
Hello again, you're watching 6-1, the main news this evening. The salary controversy in the Irish Farmers Association looks set to widen with a call for pay transparency at the former Irish Dairy Board, now known as Ornua. The president of the ICMSA, the country's second largest farm organisation, has said he's going to raise the pay issue at the next meeting of the company's board, of which he's a member.
In France, thousands of people attended a national memorial service for those killed in the Paris attacks 2 weeks ago. The names of 130 victims were read out. Meanwhile, Belgian police have charged a 6th suspect in connection with the attacks.
Northern Ireland's First Minister Peter Robinson and Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness have both condemned a gun attack on 2 PSNI officers in West Belfast. Detectives are treating last night's shooting as attempted murder.
Preparations are underway in Paris for next week's UN climate conference. More than 190 countries will be asked to sign up to a new agreement to limit greenhouse gases and global warming. In a moment, we'll talk to the UN Special Envoy on climate change, former President Mary Robinson. But first, the latest in our reports in advance of next week's conference. Our science and technology correspondent, Will Goodbody, has been looking at what, if anything, we can do to reduce the impact of one source of emissions: transport.
In Ireland, we really love our cars. But it's an unhealthy obsession, contributing significantly to climate change. Transport's the 3rd largest greenhouse gas producer, accounting for 10% of all emissions in 1990. Today it contributes 20%, with road transport making up 90% of that. So what's the answer? Steve Kelly from Dublin thinks it's electricity. He says his electric vehicle is quiet, cheap to run and clean, and range anxiety's no problem. He's done the Wild Atlantic Way in it.
Makes you drive more conservatively. You think more about the energy that you're using. And obviously you'd always keep a buffer of range in the back pocket. But once you get used to driving the car, it really is, there's no real surprises.
But Steve's one of very few here with an electric vehicle.
A few years ago, the government set a target of having 10% of all vehicles on the road here electric by 2020. There are currently 2 million private vehicles taxed here, and of those, just over 11,000 are either electric or electric hybrid. That's under 1% of the total. The numbers are increasing all the time, but it's generally accepted that the target of 10% by 2020 will not be achieved.
So what's the problem? Car makers say the incentives from the state are attractive, but could be better.
We are suggesting that benefit in kind be abolished for drivers of electric vehicles and other incentives which they've used very successfully in the UK, in Norway, such as no tolls applicable to electric vehicles, free parking.
The ESB, which spent millions building an infrastructure of 900 public charging points, says the savings are the strongest attraction. But its decision to introduce fees for the charging service has been criticised as a disincentive.
We wanted to introduce it to give a degree of certainty to people out there who are thinking of buying an EV. And we've also looked what's been done in other jurisdictions across the world, and we feel that the price we've introduced is very reasonable and we think is very fair, and we will be monitoring that price over time.
Electric vehicles aren't completely clean, however. The fuel used to charge them generates half as much emissions as that produced by a conventional car, while experts say heavy goods vehicles, accounting for a fifth of transport emissions, are unsuited to electrification.
The size of the battery that would be required to achieve acceptable range and the charging duration that would be required to refill the battery between trips render that an impractical proposition.
In the short to medium term, the only other alternatives are to boost public transport and reduce dependence on cars. Biofuels could also help, though the first generation has had drawbacks.
There is scope with second generation and potentially third generation biofuels to make a big impact, but those biofuels are still perhaps 5 to 10 years away from commercial realisation.
And so we face big challenges around how we might move around in future without warming the planet. Questions which will have to be addressed if the climate talks in Paris are to avoid becoming a road to nowhere. Will Goodbody, RTE News.
Well, let's stay with that because we're joined here in studio by UN Special Envoy for Climate Change, former President Mary Robinson. Mrs. Robinson, thanks very much indeed for talking to us on the programme. You'll be attending, of course, this conference COP21 next week in Paris. And one of the objectives here is to do a deal by the end of the conference that agrees legally binding emissions limits that at least can contain global warming and climate change.
That's right, because we're not on track at the moment for a safe world for children born today. You know, children born now will feel all the effects if we fail. And we need to stay below the 2 degrees, which is the danger point. It's not at 2 degrees, it's below 2 degrees. In fact, the nearer we get to 1.5, the better. In a way, I think I'm relatively hopeful because this agreement, this COP in Paris, has been much better prepared than Copenhagen.
Right.
And the French, who have given a lot of leadership, and I think there'll be a lot of empathy with them because of the attacks in Paris, the French have kind of made it a multi-layered agreement. First of all, you have the actual agreement itself, which is the most important. And I would love to see within that zero carbon by 2050, because that would be true to the science. We probably won't get quite that, but we'll get some indication of when we go to zero carbon. And then we need to have 5-year reviews so that we increase the ambition every 5 years. That's the first thing to watch. And we need much more support for adaptation, and we need mention of loss and damage, because some countries are beyond adaptation in part of their countries.
I mean, I know one of your particular concerns is the impact of climate change on developing countries. But developing countries are also saying we'd be hardest hit by new rules that might limit our capacity to catch up economically. So what can, what should, what needs to be done to try and take on board those concerns?
That's I think, very, very important in the debate, because countries have explained their commitments, what they will do, and many developing countries have said we want to go to renewable energy, but at the moment we can't do that without finance, without transfer of technology. It's just not possible. We have to go dirty energy unless you help us. And I'm not seeing enough of the kind of solidarity that we should be seeing to enable all developing countries to develop without emissions. This would be the way to a safe world. And it hasn't been done before, so it's really very important. That's part of the layered response. We have 177 countries that have committed to what they will do post-2020 in trying to cut emissions. We also have a need for more finance, and that will be a key issue in Paris. And I'm, again, relatively hopeful that countries understand that. And then the final thing is, very, very important, what cities will do, what forest countries will do, what civil society will do, and what business will do. And that is becoming, part of the action plan. So it's a multifaceted Paris.
We'll be in under the EU.
Yes.
The agreement will be represented, in effect, by the EU at these talks, and we'll be bound by any EU agreement. What the sort of agreement you'd like to see, what would it mean in day-to-day terms for people living in this country?
Well, the EU has already committed to reduce by 40% by 2030, and that's very significant. It would mean that we have to be more efficient and that we have to be clearer about reducing our dependence on fossil fuel in particular. And we have to look at agriculture, which is a tricky one in this country, but we have to do it. And it's not as if this is all doom and gloom. I think we can get to a better place with better jobs. Ireland is high tech. We're the very country that can benefit from moving now more to renewable energy.
Yeah, you express cautious optimism, if I can describe it as that, about what might come out of this. Are we effectively at the 11th hour here, in the last chance saloon, to use the cliche?
We are actually. The Foreign Minister of France, who's put a lot of time into this, Laurent Fabius, puts it very well. He said, we're the first generation to understand the significance and seriousness of climate change, and the last generation with time to do something about it. If we don't, things will become, they'll take a life of their own and we won't be able to manage them. And as I said, children born today will live right through this whole experience. And that, I think, is something that should make us very urgent about the responsibility in Paris, and to have reviews that Paris won't put us immediately on the right track, but it can set us on the right pathway.
Very good. Mary Robinson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
A patients group has described as unacceptable a series of surgical errors. In one case, a doctor operated on the wrong patient. In other instances, doctors operated on the wrong part of the body. The revelations are contained in a HSE report on serious reportable events for last year.
This report says there were 233 serious events in the health service last year. They range from falls to wrong diagnosis. They also include some serious surgical errors. In one case, a doctor operated on the wrong patient. In 3 others, the operation was on the wrong body part. In one case, the wrong procedure was performed on a patient. And in 14 cases, foreign bodies were left inside an enclosed cavity in a patient. Patients groups say there are procedures which should prevent mix-ups in operating theatres.
There is a verification tool for the surgeon himself to sign off that he knows exactly where he's supposed to be performing the surgery. Very, very disappointing. It's very serious that this should still be happening in 2014/15.
Because this is the first such report by the HSE, it is too early to say how 2014 compares to other years. But the organisation does say there are fewer incidents per head of population than in other countries.
Well, I've looked at some of the data from the UK, and even if you adjust for population size, what's reported in this report is still less than they would be reporting on in the UK.
The HSE says it wants to promote an open culture of disclosure and by doing so reduce the number of serious incidents. But not all health facilities provided the information requested for this report. And when RTE News asked the HSE how many had cooperated, it would only say that it was just a small number which were not compliant. Coleman O'Sullivan, RTE News at Dr. Stephen's Hospital.
€8 million worth of counterfeit perfume and aftershave has been seized at Dublin Airport, the largest ever seizure of its kind. 1,400 hoverboards have also been detained. It's thought that the goods were destined for the Christmas market.
Back to the Future predicted we'd all be using them by 2015. That hasn't quite happened, but hoverboards are now one of the must-have gadgets this Christmas. However, 1,400 of the devices that arrived in Dublin Port will be going back to their makers because of significant safety concerns.
There were issues with the plug, there were issues with the battery charger, and there were issues with the battery pack as well. We were worried there could be overheating and there might be a fire. And these are quite large devices. There is a lot of battery power in them, and the risk is very, very high. And that's why our product safety team took action. They made sure that these weren't being placed on the market.
Also sensing there was something up with the consignment of perfume and aftershave, revenue officers at Dublin Port investigated further. Hidden behind legitimate fragrances, counterfeit Chanel, Abercrombie & Fitch and Paco Rabanne, worth an estimated €8 million, making it the biggest ever seizure of its kind and saving the Exchequer almost €2 million in lost revenue.
Apart from that, you have the obvious dangers to the consumer who buys this stuff. I mean, buying counterfeit goods, you don't know what you're getting. There's no guarantees. They don't match manufacturing standards. They certainly don't have any certified health and safety criteria. And lastly, I mean, it's not going to do what it says on the box, as they say, or what it says on the tin.
Revenue says that runners, electronics, handbags and cosmetics are among the most common items detained here. They're advising customers who buy counterfeit goods that they risk losing both the money they paid and the items themselves, and that they can avoid this by buying from reputable retailers. Samantha Library, RTE News, Dublin Port.
3 medical staff have denied charges relating to the death of a woman who travelled from Ireland to the UK for an abortion in 2012. The doctor and 2 nurses appeared at the Old Bailey in London earlier today.
63-year-old Dr Adedayo Adedeji, seen here on the left of the picture, nurse Gemma Pullen, who's 32, and 55-year-old Margaret Miller, seen here in the red top, all entered their pleas of not guilty to manslaughter by gross negligence when they appeared in court in London earlier today. The charges they face relate to the death of 32-year-old Aisha Chatira in January 2012. Ms Chatira was 22 weeks pregnant when she underwent an abortion at the Mary Stopes Clinic in Ealing in West London. She collapsed in a taxi on her way to a friend's house that night after leaving the clinic. She was declared dead later that same evening. A previous court hearing was told that Ms Chatira died as a result of extensive internal bleeding. All 3 also face a charge under the Health and Safety Act relating to failing to take reasonable care of the health and safety of Ms Chatira. A plea in relation to that is due to be entered at another court hearing in January. The trial of all 3 on the manslaughter charge is scheduled to start at London's Old Bailey Court on March 7th. It is expected to last at least 4 weeks. Fiona Mitchell, RTE News, London.
Now, still to come, behind the scenes of the Late Late Toy Show.
Trinity College honours some well-known human rights campaigners.
And coming up in sport, for the first time in her career, Katie Taylor will tonight contest an elite national women's championship final. The London Olympic gold medalist secured her 4 previous titles via walkover, but tonight she'll face Shauna O'Keefe from Clonmel.
And you're very welcome back. The main news again this evening. There have been calls for pay transparency at the former Irish Dairy Board, now known as Ornua. The president of the country's second largest farm organisation, the ICMSA, is to raise the issue of pay in the wake of the current controversy engulfing the IFA.
Relatives of the victims of the Paris attacks have attended a national memorial service. The names of the 130 victims were read out at the ceremony 2 weeks after the IS attacks.
Well, a week after Ireland's first same-sex wedding, the equality campaigner Rory O'Neill was among those honoured by Trinity College this afternoon. Senator David Norris and political activist Graça Michel, Nelson Mandela's widow, also received honorary degrees from the university.
Recognised by Trinity College for campaigning on issues from marriage equality to women's rights to tackling homelessness, and today awarded with honorary degrees.
It's been a lifelong endeavour for me. I always say I didn't choose homelessness, homelessness chose me. We came across homeless kids on the streets, we felt we had to do something, and it just grew and grew and grew from there.
There was a warm welcome for another long-time activist who campaigned prominently during the same-sex marriage referendum.
When I was growing up, I would have been absolutely amazed to see somebody like me getting a doctorate from Trinity, and so on that level I think it's lovely.
Fellow campaigner David Norris was recognised for his work on decriminalising homosexual acts in the 1970s.
It was very nice to be honoured by the university where I was an undergraduate and a teacher for so many years, and now I'm representing the graduates of the college, and in such extraordinarily distinguished company.
Former politician and widow of Nelson Mandela, Graça Michel received her doctorate for her record on women's rights.
The recognition is not for me personally. It is giving a space, a voice and a face to those millions of girls and women.
Holocaust survivor Tommy Reichenthal was honoured for raising awareness about the victims of Nazi atrocities.
It's something that I owe it to the victims, and I think they won't be forgotten, and this is what I'm doing, you know.
All 5 were awarded honorary doctorates in laws. Sharon Gaffney, RTE News at Trinity College, Dublin.
And now Joe is here with our sport this evening. Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Bryan, and a very good evening to you. Well, it's 4th versus 5th in a huge meeting in the Guinness Pro 12 in the RDS tonight. Both Leinster and Ulster will be anxious to recover from damaging European defeats last weekend. Rob Kearney's been a late withdrawal for the home side.
It looked a minor enough injury when it happened, but the hamstring Rob Kearney damaged against the Scarlets 3 weeks ago sees him watching from the stands once again. His place has gone to Issa Nasewa. On the back of 2 European losses, a win against Ulster is now seen as a must.
Ulster this weekend, as I said, breakdown, massive threat there. Scrum time, line out, they're going to come at us. And then the ability they have in the back line as well. So we're going to be tested as a group. But I think you'll see the right attitude from the group, wanting to go out and, as I said, right a few wrongs and put our stamp on the game.
Ulster too have their problems. A heavy loss to Saracens this night last week left them with lots of work for the training pitch, and they're all too wary of a smarting Leinster.
Well, both teams will be definitely massively up for it, and they'll definitely both be looking to come out for the win. We're definitely going out looking for the win, and Leinster will be coming out looking to get a result after their last couple of games against the English sides.
Just a point separates the provinces, with 4th place Leinster shading it on 23. It's much too early in the season for the points from tonight's match to be regarded as vital, but the confidence boost that a win would bring is what both teams are desperate for. Justin Tracy, RTE News.
On to soccer. Louis van Gaal has admitted he is concerned about the growing discontent among some Manchester United fans.
Of course, because the fans have to be happy. You are playing for the fans, so that's we are still not lucky with finishing the chances because we are creating chances. When we are not creating chances, then maybe I am very worried. But we are creating the chances and we don't give too much away.
Now, the Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp has played down the progress the team has made since he took over from Brendan Rodgers. Liverpool have beaten both Manchester City and Chelsea away in their last 3 games, and they take on a struggling Swansea at Anfield on Sunday.
I don't know in this moment who will win the league, and I don't care about this. I don't think about this in this moment because it's not important. It's only important, to be concentrated on your own situation and how you can make your own progress, and that's what we think about. And if it would help to think about the end of the season, I would do it.
In boxing, the weekend action centres on the national finals. They're taking place at the stadium in Dublin. The women's competitions take centre stage tonight. Now Olympic champion Katie Taylor is boxing for an Irish elite title for the first time. She's up against Tipperary's Shauna O'Keefe. O'Keefe from Clonmel Boxing Club beat Clare's Kelly Murray McCormack to set up the 60-kilo decider against the 5-time AIBA World Elite Champion. Charles Schwartzel heads the field after day 2 of the Alfred Dunhill Championship in South Africa, the opening event of the 2016 European Tour Season 5. In athletics, Paula Radcliffe has been declared innocent of any blood doping by the IAAF, that's the governing body for world athletics. The distance runner went public to defend her name, claiming she'd been effectively identified by a committee of British MPs as having provided suspicious blood samples. In its response, the IAAF said there were innocent reasons for the values in her blood profile. Follow-up tests on urine and blood samples all proved negative. And that's all the sport for me for now, so back to you, Bryan.
Thank you, Joe. Before we go, it's that night of the year again. Final preparations are underway here in RTE for the Late Late Toy Show. Our reporter Jill Stedman got a sneak preview behind the scenes.
You'll be our guest, we our guest, be our guest.
Get ready for the biggest late toy show ever. Almost 300 children are involved in tonight's show, with the youngest just 4 years old. Rehearsals are wrapping up and the final touches are being put to the set.
We're here for a sneak peek of the Toy Show Set 2015. And can you guess what this year's theme is?
Beauty and the Beast! I will be dancing for the opening of the Late Late Toy Show, and I'll be dancing for the finale.
As old as time. With just hours to go, the excitement is building for some of our performers.
So Tia, will you tell me, what are you doing on the toy show?
We have to keep that top secret, but we're in a trad music group.
So as you're settling in for a cosy night, our host Ryan has just one message.
The most important secret as we're hours ticking away to the toy show is, parents of Ireland, your children have a pass tonight. They can eat all the sweets and all the jellies and all the crisps and drink all the Coke and all the 7-Up and all the stuff that you're not allowed to have, you can have tonight because I said so.
The action all kicks off tonight at 9:35 on RTE1. Jill Stedman, RTE News.
They can sing, they can dance. After all, miss, this is France. And a dinner here is never second best.
I'm looking
Can't
forward
wait.
to it. That's you go.
No, go on, Dobbo, you go.
That is Friday 6-1 News. We're going to leave you with some images of the RTE tree lighting ceremony. The News Today art competition winner Joshua Sheehan performed the honours for us a little earlier.
Bye for now.
Bye.
3, 2, 1. Push the button.